Rant-Time with Jordan. Is this mic on? The mic is live. Alright, we are ready to go. Foodie talk. Alright. On the radio, let's stop footing. Yes, this is AI. Keen to get started. Pump those ratings up high. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Alrighty guys, welcome back to another episode of Airtime with Jordan. I'm your host Jordan Faso, and round 14 done and dusted again. A few buys on the weekend with 4 of the teams not playing at all, and just disclaimer off the top, I was away over the weekend down in Tassie, caught the Hawks game down there, so I'll talk about that in a second, but missed a little bit of footy, missed the Essendon Geelong game and the Port Adelaide Melbourne game to be exact, so won't have too many detailed thoughts on those ones, didn't get to see it play, but had looked through the stats and stuff, so we'll give my thoughts based on those alone. Nonetheless, going to go through the power rankings today, have a few thoughts on the team, some more detailed ones on others, especially the Crows. I'll have a few things to talk about with them. Going to have a little rant time as well, just off the top. About the Tassie Stadium and also the roof as well, and then finish off the Secret Star Society for round 14. So stay tuned for that, guys, and let's get straight into it. This rant time, I'm going to talk about this Tassie Stadium and how that's sort of a must, I think, for a team to be down there, but also the roof as well. Like, I saw some people saying, can we build half of just the stadium and then add the roof later? I don't think that's necessarily going to happen, but just being at that game on Friday night down in Launceston, I can tell you sort of firsthand how up and about the town was, how G'd up the crowd was, in spite of it being an absolute slog of a game at times between the Hawks and the Crows, and also how cold it was. I was absolutely freezing. I had about 3 or 4 layers on, had the heat warmers in my hands and stuff, so I think first and foremost the politics behind the issue are that there's people are arguing that the money could be best spent elsewhere instead of being applied to the new stadium, and I get all that. I'm not going to pretend like I know all the ins and outs of Tasmanian politics and where the taxpayer money is going and things like that, and I absolutely understand and empathise with the issues of the healthcare system may be facing and things like that, and obviously if it's a decision between the two, then I don't know anyone who's going to argue not to have like a functioning hospital over footy, over like a footy development. But surely there's a compromise there and a way to get both over the line. I don't think I'm just taking the piss for a second, but build a hospital inside the stadium. Who cares? I think you just got to find a way to get it done. And the reason being is that the appetite for first class footy is apparent. Like, the crowd was awesome. They showed that on the weekend. They packed out the University of Tasmania Stadium in absolutely freezing weather, and they were just so into the game. The atmosphere was great, being there live, and in spite of that, I think that in spite of the weather and the general sentiment of everyone that I spoke to there was obviously going to be pro AFL and pro stadium. Absolutely a biased sample of the people that I spoke to at the game, but I just think that it makes so much sense. They're going to have a serious supporter base. They're not going to fail as a team. Like, the Tassie people are absolutely going to get behind this team if given one. And when you're comparing them to teams like Gold Coast, GWS, and even North Melbourne, like, I think they're going to have a better supporter base than all of those teams. So I think that financially it's viable. You're going to pack out that stadium if they packed it out anyway, and it was freezing. And I just don't think that the club as a premise has the potential to fail, and actually think it has the potential to be quite profitable. And we've seen the success of the Tasmanian Jack Jumpers in the NBL. They're one of them. They've led the league in jersey sales the last couple of years as well. So I think that people are going to jump on board, of course. And the issue is that with the weather, you need the stadium and the roof. It's too cold down there consistently, so I would absolutely push for a roof down on that stadium, and also just like the player retention side of things would become an issue, of course. Like, if they are going to progress and the government's like, oh no, make do with Ninja Stadium and UTAS, then the people aren't going to be wanting to play in horrible conditions every week, even if it gives the home team a bit of an advantage down there. But it's also not even just for football. Like, the football side of it is huge, obviously, and that's what we're talking about here. But the other major events that are going to be held there, the team would the stadium would absolutely prop up tourism and the team in general. So it's a state that's filled with good experiences, activities, natural beauty, food, wine. That it's got the whole shebang. So it sounds like a bit of an ad for Tassie, but it is great. It is a great place to visit in general, and I think that having the stadium there and is an excuse for people to go down for the week. And yeah, it's going to provide jobs to the locals in what is the state with the highest unemployment rate in the country as well. So that's another reason to get people down there and visiting the place. It's going to open up a lot more jobs and things like that too. So yeah, I suppose this isn't really a rant, but rather just a bit of a petition to get this over the line. So AFL, Tassie government, whoever is holding this up, please just make it work. And yeah, Tassie is a great place. It's deserving of its own team and also deserving of its own state of the art arena. So please make it happen. That's all I really got on the Tassie situation and the team. Hopefully it does get over the line, as I said. But let's get into the footy from round 14, and it is time to go through the power rankings. And surprise, surprise, we have Collingwood still up the top. They didn't play on the weekend; they had the bye, so they haven't moved up or down. No one was good enough to knock them off the top spot, especially with the bye at hand. But yeah, so Collingwood still number one. Number two, have held Brizzy there, and look, I did not expect that they would lose at home. GWS were coming off a bit of poor form recently. Brizzy lost the bat, like a tough one over in Adelaide the week before, and back at home at the Gabba, I didn't expect them to lose two in a row, but they did. And a big part of that was Jack Payne going out in the first quarter, and I think that's sort of like where the difference sort of was in the game, and it was a bit contextual, them losing two in a row. And I think, as I said, Jack Payne going out was a big part in that. The two Giants key forwards, Jesse Hogan and Aaron Cadman, had their absolute way with the Brisbane defence, which essentially I think was the difference in the end. And I'll get into the Giants part of that in a second when in their segment. But on the Brizzy side, they absolutely lost. They weren't able to fix their backline after Jack Payne went down and sort of stopped the two Giants key forwards from dominating the game. And that's something they're going to have to work through. They threw Hipwood back there, but I do think that they can reconstruct it on the fly a little bit. Obviously mid-game it's going to be a bit harder to do that when you have a philosophy coming into the game, but this team in general has some bodies that I think they can throw back there, whether it be forwards going back like they did with Hipwood in this one, or bringing in Tom Doedee as the one. And I don't think that they can necessarily replace Jack Payne. Like, they don't have someone that good and that big, and he plays like a pretty vital role for them. But let's say they do bring Tom Doedee in. In theory, the thinking of that would be that he can get back to playing his sort of intercepting role that he's dominated at through the early part of his career anyway, and obviously had a couple of years off here, but hopefully he's able to get back to his best. And then what that's going to do is that if they bring Tom Doedee, then Harris Andrews may just have to play a bit more of a defensive role rather than trying to intercept and come off his man as much. And I think more strictly defending and more be a bit tighter on his man than he has at certain points in the year, because he's going to be that big body that they need to stop the best key forwards in the league. I think although it makes it a little bit tougher structurally for the Lions, that they have enough pieces and the talent overall to be able to cover Jack Payne, in theory anyway. And Brendan Starcevich has missed a bit of time this year. Him being back healthy obviously makes it a bit easier if they're able to bring Doedee in. Ryan Lester as well obviously can play up or down in size, and can be he might be able to be ragdolled a bit by like an Adelaide forward line or something like that. But they have options. They have Ty Gallup. They gave a game to a few weeks ago. He might be able to come forward, and they put Hipwood back. But I just think that there are a few machinations here that the Lions are going to be able to try. And I have a faith that they're going to be able to figure it out. And if not, we're going to know in a few weeks' time. But yeah, I think that the best case scenario for them is that Tom Doedee's played enough VFL now that he can potentially come back into the team and recapture some of his best form. And I think they should be okay if that happens. If it doesn't, it's going to be interesting to see what they sort of go with. But I think that, as I said, I think they've got enough pieces to sort of accommodate the loss of Jack Payne. Definitely not replacing him, but yeah, I think that they might be able to conjure something up. Coming in at number 3 on the power rankings board are the Cats, and as I said in the open, I didn't see this game, but it looks like it was a complete demolition by the Cats anyway against an undermanned Essendon team. So I think it's as the sort of trend has continued, but I think it's going to be pretty hard to stop, Bailey Smith, Max Holmes, and Tom Atkins inside for any team. At the moment, they're playing very well, and the combination of running power and their ability to win the contested ball and also tackle is proving to be a very, very balanced midfield at the moment. And you also have like the two Irish guys who are able to contribute through there as well, with Oisin Mullen and Mark O'Connor as well. So they play those roles as taggers, or and that's before you sort of start getting into the Dangerfield and other small forwards who are able to rotate through there as well, and break glass in case of emergency. They can play Tom Stewart as well. So yeah, as I was sort of saying, like just a lot of balance, a lot of talent and versatility, not just in the midfield but across the whole team and each line. And yeah, I think if they can stay healthy, I might need to bump them up a spot here soon and potentially overtake Brisbane in my power rankings. I'm very aware that I might be moving slowly on Geelong here, but yeah, I think I've been relatively high on them all year and didn't drop them when they went through a little bit of a lull. So yeah, I think that I'm not underestimating them at all. I think they're absolutely a contender, and their midfield group especially is just causing a lot of issues for other teams at the moment. The Bulldogs, they're still fourth for me. They had a big win against the Saints on the weekend, of course, or on Thursday night it was in the end. But yeah, I know that the sort of narrative around this team is that they haven't beaten anyone of note, but I also think that they've been the most sort of one of, if not the most injury-riddled or unsettled team out of all the perceived sort of finals contenders at least. And any team that's going to have their two best players only having played one game together definitely makes a difference to your position on the ladder. And when you consider how close they've been in some of the games against some of the better teams in the league, and they've been in the lead in some of those games too, where they probably shouldn't have dropped those leads even without the two best players playing together, in Bontempelli and Sam Darcy, of course I'm referring to. But against Collingwood, Freo, Brisbane, Gold Coast, Geelong and Hawthorn, they've all been relatively close games. And as I said, they've been in the lead in some of those as well. So I think you can sort of start to see why I'm so high on them. If they have had Bont and Darcy playing in these games, then they probably win some of them, and we're talking about them slightly differently, I think. And I don't really think there's a better midfield duo in the league right now than Ed Richards and Bontempelli, and especially if Sam Darcy gets going, then I don't think there's going to be a better key forward in the comp either at the end of this year. And yeah, I genuinely think that this team's ceiling is probably the highest in the league right now. It's just a matter of whether they can sort of get the continuity in the back half of the year that they need to fully bounce forward, in my opinion. So yeah, very high on the Dogs. I think that we're about to see them really take off here as they start to get some games into their better players, and hopefully they can build to a top four spot. If not, see if they can make another run at it outside of the top four. Coming in at fifth, we have the Crows. I haven't moved them up or down after their performance on the weekend against the Hawks on Friday night, and they really should have won that game. They really only had themselves to blame in that one, with Rankin, Phil Thorpe, Darcy Fogarty, and Tex Walker, Josh Rochelle, all the main sort of five forwards that they have, or main five scoring options. They went a combined 1 goal 10 on the weekend. So if your forward line is kicking at that sort of rate, you're not going to win a lot of games, and you can sort of see why they lost that one in the end. And despite that, I definitely did come away thinking that this team is really, really primed to take a massive leap, though. I'm not sure whether it's going to be this year necessarily, but I might still have them a little bit high, being fifth in the power rankings at the moment. But yeah, as I said, they may not be ready this year, but I think whether it's late this year or next year, I'm pretty concerned for the rest of the league at what Adelaide are building. I think that the development of Curtin and Isaac Rankin in particular is going to sort of set the ceiling for this team. And I think the reason I think Daniel Curtin's development is so important is sort of the trend that I see with their whole squad, and that's the fact that they have such significant sort of positional size around the ground at the moment. They've clearly made it a priority in their list management to target those sort of guys in the draft and trade with, I went through their list and they have 11 guys that played on the weekend over 190 centimetres, which is just a huge group. I haven't gone through other teams though, but half of the team that you're playing on the weekend are over 190 centimetres, and and that's before you get to Isaac Cumming, who's 188, and Mitch Hind at 187, and both are quite big for the positions that they play as well. So I think a big part of their success is having those size mismatches all over the ground, and we saw it consistently with their wingers being much larger than the Hawks wingers, and their defenders also being really strong and being able to put key forwards under the ball, and then you're letting a massive interceptor and Josh Worrell just come over and fly across the pack, and him himself is going to be able to, contest most key position players, let alone, when he's playing against a small forward or whatever, he's still capable in that role as well. So, yeah, and then the topic has been about their key forwards and having how many they're playing this year at any one time, and I think that, the amount of criticism that's gotten in terms of the what it limits from a pressure side of things, you're getting that that's being outweighed on the other side with them generally having some sort of mismatch with one of those matchups as well. So just for them, I think it's a matter of bit of chemistry and being able to sort of figure out how to attack and find those mismatches throughout the ground, because with that general size that they have, I think there's no way that they're not gonna have mismatches at every line across the ground at some point. And I think that Curtin playing on the wing on the weekend was a huge success there too. He has the mobility to do it, and he's 197 centimeters, and only Mark Blitzars will be able to compare to that on a wing. And as I said, I think their ability to create these mismatches is sort of an interesting bet to see if that overall size is able to overwhelm teams and maybe compensate for the lesser pressure that they may put on as a result around the ground. And I think in that way they're absolutely trending against the grain of the rest of the competition in that regard. And we often see that outlier teams tend to be the ones that end up setting the tone or being ahead of the pack in the next iteration of how the game's going to be played. And I think it's just an interesting watch to see if this is the mould that is going to sort of be the next wave of modern football. And I think that their size is still, as I said, they've got a lot of size around the ground, but it is complemented with a lot of effort-based players as well that are able to put pressure on and maybe compensate for that size a little bit. You got James Peatling, who didn't play on the weekend, Jake Saligo, Ben Keys, those sort of guys who are just always on at 100%. So, a bit of a watch this space on them for now as I think that they're going to break out and but potentially going to break out and cause some serious problems for the competition, if not this year, then in the few years to come. And I guess other part of I sort of talked about Curtin and Rankin, and Curtin's side sort of got me onto that bit of a tangent about the team in general, but just on Rankin, I genuinely think he's going to be one of the three best players in the league in the next few years. And it's more just on the eye test, whenever you watch him go near the ball, there's this feeling of what the hell is going to happen here. And in my opinion, he's one of the closest players we've seen to Gary Ablett Jr. in terms of his archetype. He's can play forward very, very effectively as a small forward, but then he's adding this midfield layer to his game as well, and it's building really nicely for them. And I think as he gets more consistent as a midfielder and accumulating the ball, you're going to see a lot more damage from him, as well as the ability to work through tags. If he's going to be able to be an effective forward and kick 3 or 4 goals if he plays up there against a tag, then as well as get his 25 to 30 touches a game, then he's going to be a very, very damaging player. And it was very fun to watch him up close. And if he continues to develop, then he may surpass Jordan Dawson as their best player, and as I said, potentially challenge for the competition title as well. So very high on the Crows, if not this year, then in the coming years. The Gold Coast Suns didn't play on the weekend, so they're staying at 6th on my power rankings board. But moving up one spot, we have the Hawks from 8th to 7th. And I think it wasn't a pretty way that they won this game, but they did find a way to win, and that's all that sort of matters. And that's been the case in a lot of their wins lately. They haven't been exactly playing amazing, but they're just finding a way to win. And the defensive group was amazing. Yet again, I think that their defense has been one of the best in the competition across the whole year, and that's sort of really holding them firm in terms of their win-loss ratio at the moment. I think, especially early on in the game, I thought Riley Philthorpe looked like he was going to dominate Tom Barras, but TB really dominated the air, I thought, down back after that. And I think I was going to say Damien Hardwick, but they do call him Dimmer. But Blake Hardwick, he just needs to stay in defence as well. Him and Impey are a nightmare defensive duo on small forwards. So I think that he has to settle down back, and especially when James Sicily comes back into the team, I don't think that he's going to be a backman necessarily with the amount of quality they have down there. And Dylan Moore, incredible performance, had 13 tackles in this one, was just, he brought the pressure. I thought he was great all night with his competitiveness, and I sort of touched on Jarman Impey, but he was incredible as well. I thought, his defensive efforts, he had 10 intercepts, 4 intercept marks, and his run game was just as important for breaking Hawthorn through some of the Crows' defensive lines, and he had 756 metres gained in what was a bit of a slog of a game. So yeah, really impressive numbers from him. And yeah, I think that the Hawks forward line still, I've been banging that drum all year, but it remains a real problem for them, and I'm not really sure how they're going to get the Smalls involved consistently enough to make any serious noise come finals time. They desperately need something down there, whether it's Mitch Lewis coming back or Sicily to come back and be the third sort of tall forward or key forward for the Hawks. And yeah, you can just see it. Adelaide has a pretty big defensive group, but their defenders were just able to push Chol and Gunson consistently under the ball, and allowing their players to intercept, and it was just non-competitive from the Hawks forwards for a large part of the game. I think Jack Gunson broke free on some leads eventually, and Chol too as well came into the game with his effort, but just we need another target. I think the Hawks to be a bit more consistent up forward and be able to bring the ball to ground. And I've been banging that drum for a number of weeks now, but Max Ramsden was not the answer here. He was played that second ruck, but he's a ruckman in the VFL and ruck forward in the VFL, and he wasn't able to perform in that role, I didn't think, on the weekend. They've given him 2 weeks, so I think that they can move on from there. And I think Sam Mitchell as well sort of realised that he wasn't competing well as a forward, and moved Max Ramsden into the middle as well, as the Hawks weren't doing well in the clearances either, so putting Meek forward a little bit more in the second half to create those contests sort of worked, I thought. And I think that just shows that they just need any sort of competitive body up forward at the moment. It's not even necessarily going to be, they don't need Jeremy Cameron or Riley Thorpe or anything like that. They just need someone to help bring Nick Watson and Connor McDonald and stuff into the game a little bit more consistently. So yeah, I think that's sort of where I am with the Hawks forward line. And yeah, before I move on, I just want to give Sam Butler a bit of a shout out. I think he is absolutely an AFL player. He's been an absolute tackling machine over the last couple of weeks, and I really hope he's able to keep his spot as the Hawks start to get healthier. And if it comes down to it, I honestly would prefer him over Jack Ginnivan. He can play as a forward. He's probably not as crafty or able to hit the scoreboard as consistently, but his ability to also play through the centre bounces with his level of pressure and athleticism, I think, give him a bit of a leg up on Ginnivan there. And I would seriously be considering that if I was Sam Mitchell, if it comes down to those two. 8, we have Freo. They dropped a spot for me. Only just got over the line against North Melbourne, and it's always good to win, regardless. But it was an ugly one in their quote unquote away game. Of course, they played North Melbourne at Optus Stadium in what was a North home game. So yeah, make of that what you will. Thank you, North Melbourne, in that case, if you're Freo. But since that sort of ugly loss against the Saints they had a few weeks ago, and then the following loss they had against Collingwood the week after, Collingwood were pretty undermanned in that one. I think that Freo have rattled off 4 in a row against GWS, Port Adelaide, Gold Coast and North. So it's been an impressive 4 weeks for them, and the last 2 weeks they've had their dual ruck combination as well. So all the naysayers, myself included, can sort of shove it for a minute until that starts to falter, I think. But yeah, I still think that I'm probably lower than most on this team, just due to the lack of consistency they've sort of shown over the last few years. But they also have 3 relatively easy weeks coming up, with Essendon obviously very injured at the moment, St Kilda and Sydney as well after that. So yeah, they could potentially rattle off 7 in a row, which would absolutely be a statement in this part of the season, and maybe make myself reconsider where I'm putting them and where I'm ranking them at the moment. GWS, they're still 9th for me. Great win against Brizzy up at the Gabba, but we need to see it a bit more consistently, sort of like Freo as well. And I'm probably a bit more of a believer in GWS than Freo, but I think they've probably been even more inconsistent than Freo to start the year. But yeah, on a good note, I think it was really great to see Aaron Cadman finally have that big breakout game. Kicked 5 goals, of course, had 12 or 13 marks, I think, which is just, really, really good performance from a key forward. And sort of banging the drum on him and how good I think he can be for about, probably the best part of a year now. And I think that it's finally paid off against some really good competition in the Lions as well. So yeah, gonna be huge if they can sort of get him, Jesse and Toby all performing super well in that forward line. And yeah, I think that in this one their pace looked really good as well. Like a lot of their faster players looked like they were zipping around the ground again. And obviously Brent Daniels went out in this one, which sucks. But I think that their pace looked really good in this game, and it probably helped that Finn Callaghan returned as well. I've been pretty high on their talent all year, but just need to see them perform, and especially their midfield group as well. So obviously Finn Callaghan helping there with his return, and I spoke last week about how they have one of the best defenses in terms of the best defense in terms of the ability to repel inside 50s from the opposition in the competition, but they've just been unable to transition the ball. And I think that the reintroduction of Finn Callaghan and hopefully Brent Daniels can get back as well, and they can start to connect their defensive 50 to forward 50 a bit better. And a little bit of a watch this space for me on them. This could be a once-off where the talent all just came together for 1 week, but also could be a bit of a springboard for the rest of the year. So interesting to see, I think. The Baggers, they've gone up 1 spot for me. They've gone to 10th in the power rankings, and they did. It wasn't the most convincing job against West Coast, to say the least. They got out early in the first quarter and then just sort of held that lead as West Coast decided to actually play football for the last 3 quarters, or last 2.5 quarters at least. And on the Carlton side, they are a bit undermanned at the moment, of course, so I won't knock them too much, but I still don't think they're going to end up playing finals. And I was watching the game, and I sort of, you take in all the rumours and stuff that are going around at the moment, and how Carlton may look to move someone of their their core players, their star players that have been paid a lot of money to either help De Koning stay or bring in some more talent on the list. And a lot of the people are pointing towards Harry Mackay being that person, or Sam Walsh has been in rumours as well. But before he went down on the weekend, I started to think that maybe Charlie Curnow should be the one that they trade. And it might seem a little bit crazy, but if they're going to sell someone from the high paid core of players that they have, it is him. I think, in my opinion, he's just on the eye test. I think he's lost a considerable step athletically. He's probably the least, the worst team player out of the group of them as well. He doesn't chase very often as a key forward. He definitely gives up once his job is done. He gives up, or his perceived job of launching the ball. I think that he's a bit selfish at times as well. And there's multiple times a game where he'll burn a teammate, and it doesn't matter against West Coast. He did it to Hudson O'Keefe, who was in the goal square. Oh no, it was Tom De Koning who was in the goal square, and he just completely burned him for a guaranteed goal, and he snapped from about 35 out, which maybe somewhat regulation for him, but he gave up an absolute guaranteed goal for a maybe shot of his own. And as I said, it probably doesn't matter against West Coast, but those sort of things do matter against good teams, and it does rub off a little bit. I saw Blake Acres as well after that take a ping from 55 metres out when he had options. Like, he was just breaking 50 and he had plenty of options to go to, and it just seemed like he wanted to get on the scoreboard as well. And there are other examples too, but as a whole, I don't think that they necessarily are playing for each other all the time. And I'm not saying that's all Charlie's fault, but he definitely is a part of that. And I think that given that Charlie also has more currency in the trade market than Harry Mackay would at this point in time, he has a history of injuries that may potentially age him a bit quicker as well. And the fact that I think Harry is an absolute team player at the end of the day, and that I'm just thinking that they might be better off sending Charlie out. Like, imagine the haul that you could get for Charlie Curnow in a trade at the end of the year. And I think potentially keeping Tom De Koning in the process, if that's the route they want to take, or getting some more talent around the remainder of the list to sort of supplement all the other stars that they have, while still having a number of key position players in place. I don't think that. I don't know. It's just something to think about. I'm not saying they definitely should do that, but if there was someone that, if you're trying to build a win now team, I understand Charlie Curnow would ideally be a part of that win now team, but he's also going to give you the most value to go and get players who are ready to contribute right now, or other picks to trade for other players and stuff like that. I just think that, I don't know. I think that there's something in that, and I think that, we saw Harry Mackay win a Coleman without Charlie Curnow playing, so it's not like that's not in Harry Mackay anymore. You still have a Coleman medalist on your list. But obviously Harry has his own issues, and I'm well aware of those. It's just I think I'm a bit more of a believer in Harry and the vibes he brings than Charlie right now, and in combination with obviously Charlie's going to have more on the market than get you more on the market than Harry would. So just something to think about, I think. I also just want to shout out Alex Chincotta as well. I think that, a bit of a long segment on my rant about Charlie a little bit there, but I do think that Carlton need more players who have a bit more of a specialised role, because at the moment they're, quote-unquote role players, to me at least, seem to just be floating around a lot out there without like a specific plan to sort of assist the star players that they do have. And I think that him being that tough defensive forward or tagger at times, like, gives him a place to be in the team and out in the field and a purpose out there. I'm not saying that they're all going to be able to do that or just be a tagger and go for it. Obviously not, but he's one of the role players in this team that when he plays, he doesn't look lost out there. He seems to run around with purpose, and I think that the Blues maybe just sort of, broadly speaking, not broadly speaking, just maybe ask a bit too broadly of their role players to play in general, and I think that they could sort of benefit from maybe simplifying what they're asking, or just expecting of some of their role players in general. So just some thoughts on the Blues role players there as well. 11th we have Port. I've bumped them up 3 spots, and Jason Horne-Francis came back in this one, and Port are as well. They're back also. All of their players, all their best guys look to have played better in this one. I didn't see the game, as I said, but just scanning over the stats, Connor Rosie had 32 touches, 78 disposal efficiency, 776 metres gained. Horne-Francis, 29 touches, 8 score involvements, 7 clearances. Miles Bergman, 22 touches, 7 intercept possessions, 6 score involvements, 6 inside 50s, and then Butters as well, 27 touches, 8 score involvements. So, it does seem to be a bit of a trend with Port when their core 4 or 5 start to play well together. Then and that's before I even mentioned Georgiades, who kicks 7. So can't forget him in this one. But when they all sort of start to play well, then the team does as well. It's just a bit hard when you rely on so few, and one injury can derail you for a few weeks at a time. And obviously they got a good win against GWS last week without Jason Horne-Francis, but I think that when you do rely on so few to produce at their best consistently just to have a chance at winning, then it's going to be hard to do that across a full season when injuries inevitably going to occur, as they do to Rosie and Butters at times as well. So they're 2 games out of the 8, and while that sort of may seem possible to come back from, that they do only have a percentage of 84%. So it's probably going to take them winning an extra game to account for that percentage, and I wouldn't have thought they're going to end up making the finals, but crazier things have happened, as we've seen over the last few years. Essendon, they've come in 12th. Not really worried yet, despite some of the big losses of late. And, of course, you don't really want that happening too frequently. But, when you look at the injury list, you can absolutely see why this is happening. You've got Kyle Langford, Jordan Ridley, Mason Redmond, Zach Reid, Sardell Hawley, Ewan, Nick Cox, Mackay, Draper, Hayes, Nick Bryan, and Edwards as well. So, that's a long injury list, and it's probably 7 or 8 out of the best 22 that aren't playing right now, depending, I guess, of what you think of Al Hawley or and Cox there. But any team missing that many key players, let alone a rebuilding group, are going to get smashed week in, week out. And there's probably going to be a few more mulligans here until they regain some of those structural pieces, I think. Melbourne, they're 13th, so they've had a few good weeks here, but I'm probably a bit harsher of a critic on Melbourne at the moment than anyone else, but they've dropped 3 spots in the power rankings for me, and as I said, they showed some fight for a while, for a few weeks there, but I fear that maybe all they sort of had to give on the season, and now that it's going to get tough again, they might just sort of give up again, is sort of how I'm thinking about it. anecdotally at least. And the debacle at the end of the Pies game last week may have sort of longer lasting effects on the morale, as their best players just didn't show up in this one. Other than Cozzy Pickett and Max Gorman, which has been the story of the whole season for the most part, where those two have been performing. And in some games they're good enough to get them over the line, but they're just not enough from the other guys to sort of complement what those guys are bringing on a weekly basis at the moment. And Stephen May leading the reverse Coleman is pretty hilarious after the embarrassment that was last week as well against the Pies. So there are a few reasons why that may be the case, and it's not all his, of course, where intercepted defenders probably are going to be out of position a bit more. So if the ball is turned over or the ball moves too fast for him to get back on his opponent, then he's going to get taken advantage of there, and more likely his player may end up with the ball. And I think that regardless though, like he probably is giving his opponent too much space at the moment and thinking that he's still the Stephen May of old and that Melbourne are the team of old, and he needs to adjust. And is he capable of making up that space anymore and being the interceptor that we've seen in the past? Like, probably not. So maybe he should just focus on his man a bit more, I think, at this point. And Christian Petrarca is the other one. I think he's a real issue here at the moment, and maybe they should have sold on him at the end of last season, as I sort of thought they probably should have, given all the issues that we're having there. And anyway, I think that they're already stuck with Clayton Oliver's contract, and maybe they're going to be stuck here with Petrarca's as well. And like, just a bit of a stock take on him. Keep in mind that some of these stats are all these stats are sort of benchmarked based on his position, so it's all related to being a midfielder here. But he's got a career low kicking efficiency right now. He's below average for midfielders in general. He's below average in his disposal efficiency as well. He is elite in inside 50s, but that doesn't really matter when you're delivering the ball as bad as he is at the moment. So good on him for getting the volume of inside 50s, but he's not doing anything with it. He's average in marks, tackles, clearances, intercept possessions, shots on goal accuracy, pressure acts. He is elite in score involvements and shots at goal. So I guess the volume part of his game is okay. Like, he's above average in disposals as well. But it's still not elite like it once was. But and the overall defensive effort and efficiency with the ball has just like completely fallen off a cliff, as you can sort of see by those stats there. But that doesn't sound like a top 5 midfielder to me in the league when you read those sort of the descriptive stats that we have there. And I don't know whether it's the level of motivation that he doesn't have, knowing that Melbourne probably aren't going to be a contender this year, or it's like psychological impacts from his injury last year, or he's just lost a step. Like, I'm not really sure what it is, and I really do wonder what his value is going to be at the end of this season. Like, this season sort of feels a little bit of a waste for Melbourne, and if they get to the end of the year and like, what are they going to do? Are they going to still go for it the year after next and hold on to Petrarca, Gorn, and that again, and just see where they can get to? Pray that everyone develops inside and can compensate for the drop off of their the core players that have held them up there for so long. Like, I don't know if that's necessarily the best issue, and if you are going to end up selling Clayton Oliver and Clayton Oliver and Christian Petrarca, then what are you going to get for them? Like, maybe you should have just pulled the trigger and been bold at the end of last year and gotten rid of those guys while you still could, and restart your rebuild a year early, because it's not looking great from Clayton or Christian this year at all. And when those two have fallen off a cliff, and they're probably taking up like 25% of your salary cap between the two of them, it's not a great result, not a great thing when you're trying to rebuild a list, I don't think. And I mean, maybe he can go elsewhere and contribute at a higher level, but I think the days of Christian Petrarca being a top 5 midfielder in the league may be over. 14th, we have the Saints, and they've dropped one spot for me this week after that big loss to the Doggies on the weekend. And as I said, there's just not enough talent here at all. And again, I've been on this for a few weeks now, but please just tank. Like, please, not even tank. Just call it development season. Play Garcia, play Wilson, play Alex Tauru, play Lance Collard, play Sean Makers, play Hugh Boxall, play Liam Henry, continue to play Travalia and Windhager and Owens and all those younger sort of players, and please stop playing these guys, or don't even consider playing these guys if you were, like Zach Jones, Brad Hill, Liam Stocker, although I do love watching Liam Stocker play at times, I don't think you need to play him. I don't necessarily think you need to play Hunter Clark either, Dougal Howard, Dan Butler, Zane Cordy. Those guys are like, they're not going to be there for your next team. You have enough veterans out there. You've got Rowan Marshall up in the midfield. Jack Steele can still play as your captain. I know you're not going to drop him. You've got Wilkie and Sinclair behind the ball as well. So there's plenty of veterans out there that are going to be able to guide the young guys and just blood some of them. Like, there's nothing left to lose. You've got your own pick. You can drop down the ladder a little bit more. And yeah, I think that even if some of the young guys are bad, like, then that they're not AFL listed players, or they may not have the potential if you don't see any flashes from them, and that means you can probably put a line through them and take a punt on someone else at this end of the season if you don't like what you see. So I think it's just time to lean into a rebuild. Not even a rebuild. Like, they've got some good young talent on the list already. Like, they've been rebuilding. I just think that you're not gaining anything from playing some of these older guys, and they're not performing anyway. So, like, why wouldn't you play the younger guys who may be eager to play? Yeah, they might get beat up, but they'll you just need to give them some minutes, I think, at this point. And yeah, that's sort of where I'm at with St Kilda. The Swans, they've come into 15th in the power rankings. They had a bye last week, so not much to touch on there. 16th, we have North Melbourne. No movement here. I don't suspect there will be for any of the bottom three teams going forward, but yeah, I think that they're sort of relatively locked into place at the moment. But yeah, on North Melbourne, they're almost there. They're just not quite getting it done, are they? And I fear that the sort of years of losing that this team has gone through is sort of a little bit, a bit of a hangover on this group specifically, and it's sort of ingrained in them a little bit, where they just don't really know how to win a close game. As you know, like we've seen over the last few weeks, they had the draw against Brisbane, of course. They won by 4 against Richmond. Had a big loss, 45 to Collingwood, although they were in it for 3 quarters there, so that was a bit disappointing. But then, plus 10, they won against West Coast, and then lost by 6 to Freo on the weekend. So, there are some bad teams in there, of course. They beat the teams they were meant to in Richmond and West Coast, but they're competing against other teams, and that's sort of the difference, I think, especially between them and West Coast at the moment. They're competing against other teams. They think they can win. They just can't get that signature over the line win just yet. And I think it's going to come in the back half of the year though, and they've just got to keep at it at this point. I think there's enough talent on this list for where you can see it. They're in games. They just can't win them at the moment, and hopefully they can get a bit more consistent as the year goes on. Richmond, 17th, had the bye. Moving on. 18th, we have the West Coast Eagles, and I talked about effort, and North Melbourne at least bring effort every week, and West Coast did not at all in this one. And this is one of the games where it's like they potentially could have caused an upset, right? Like, they can't run undermanned. It's at home out in the West, and they just didn't show up for the first quarter and a half. Really, they were non-existent. There were poor efforts from almost every player in that period, giving up on chases, not chasing at all, and all of it just resulting in like really easy goals for Carlton, I thought. And it got a bit better, once Carlton were up by 50 already, so I guess you got to give them that they still tried even when they were down by that much in the end. But yeah, it was not a great performance overall by them. I think at least a few good signs came out of it. Tyler Jawar, he won the Rising Star. He's been exciting to see him emerge over the course of the season. Elijah Hewitt continues to have exciting moments, as does Tyler Brockman. So you're holding on to hope for those two to break out. Ruben Jinby is just an absolute star in the making. I think that I obviously have been pretty high on him in the podcast, but I think that he in general is actually just proving to be a bit of a gun for them, and I think they have absolutely hit on him. There's definitely something there with Ryan Marich as well and Bo Allen. I think those two guys have something there, a good level of talent, and one of my Secret Star Society nominees, Harry Edwards, as well. I think I'm liking what I'm seeing from him. So I guess my point of bringing all those guys up is that there is some talent on this list now. There's something I wasn't necessarily absolutely sure of heading into the year, but the talent needs to be sort of enhanced with their effort levels, I think, at the moment. And yeah, they might end up losing, but at least lose while trying. Like, it's like they're too scared to try at some points this year. And I think on the flip side to that, you're seeing Jack Graham, who I wasn't a huge fan of that signing. coming into the year, I didn't think a heap of him at Richmond, but the intensity levels that he provides needs to be adopted by everyone else in this team. He's such a competitive player. It really pops off the screen how much he tries, and I really love what he brings to a relatively uncompetitive group at the moment. And I just got to shout him out, because it would be super hard to keep bringing that level of effort week in, week out, when you're one of the only people doing it. And I think, like, for people who don't watch a lot of Jack Graham, he definitely seems like a bit of a poor man's Tom Atkins. It's not really a slight at Jack Graham. I think it's just more praise for Tom Atkins in that regard. But yeah, I think that if the Eagles end up being a good competitive team in a few years, there's no reason why he can't play that sort of role that Tom Atkins is at the moment for the Cats. So yeah, I'll just shout out to Jack Graham, because I think he really is deserving of it at the moment. That's it for the power rankings, guys, and going to get into the Secret Star Society for round 14, and this one's probably not much of a secret. I think he was very, very good on the weekend, and I think it was too good too early to not give this guy a shout out. But Tom McCarthy from the Eagles, he instantly looks like a keeper. He, first game on the weekend, was the only guy who was able to move the ball and draw his teammates into space at times, and I think he looked like a true pro, and the fact that he was the first Eagles player to reach 30 disposals in a game this year is quite amazing by him, and at the same time quite sad on the Eagles' behalf as well. So that, in addition with the fact that he had the most disposals in a debut ever from an Eagles player, is pretty impressive. He had 31 touches, went at 93.5 disposal efficiency. He had 571 metres gained, 9 contested possessions, 8 ground ball gets, 9 intercepts, and that was only behind my boy Ruben Jinby and Jacob Wiedering as well for the Blues. So really, really strong debut game from him. And he's 24, he's 187 centimetres, he's just played in defence, but I think he's touted as a bit of a midfielder as well. So just exceptional first game from him, and I really think he has the sort of spatial awareness to play in the midfield as well, consistently as he gets used to the level. And it sort of reminded me a bit of a Mitch Duncan type of player from the Cats, and it's the second Eagles player that I've compared to a Geelong player today. But I think that he's elite. He doesn't have like the most elite physical tools by the looks of it, but comes across as a pretty smart player, has really good touch and feel for the game and skills. So I know it's only one game, but let's go with him for now. And he's another piece of the puzzle for the Eagles in this rebuild. So really, really impressive debut from Tom McCarthy, and he is the Secret Star Society inductee for round 14. So good on him. Thanks for listening, guys, and we'll be back next week. Enjoy the footy.